We all know the story, right? Adam and Eve, the garden, the apple, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's foundational.
But has it ever struck you that the Genesis version we all know might not be the only version out there?
Or maybe even the first one.
Exactly. Okay, let's really get into this because today we're doing a deep dive into the first book of Adam and Eve.
Hmm?
It's an ancient text, and honestly, it gives a surprisingly different angle.
A much more detailed take, really.
Sure.
And what's really fascinating, is how this narrative goes beyond Genesis.
Yes.
This text we're looking at, it has incredibly deep roots.
Right.
Though its exact origins, they're kind of debated. Likely unknown Egyptian authors, maybe an Arabic original.
Before it got translated into Ethiopic and then eventually English, right?
Precisely. And it's important to remember, while it was influential, this text is outside the usual biblical canon.
Okay, yeah, good point.
Its unique history, the potential for different readings, that's key to understanding its value.
And its influence is pretty undeniable, isn't it? You see echoes of its themes, even specific details popping up in places like the Talmud and the Quran.
Absolutely. Which just highlights its historical significance, its widespread reach.
Totally. Think of it as this ancient parallel story, one that clearly mattered to a lot of people. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. This book basically picks up after the famous expulsion from Eden.
Right, it's like the sequel. What happened next?
Exactly. Forget paradise. This is all about their tough adjustment to, well, the real world.
And it focuses surprisingly on, the everyday stuff. Early family life.
Yeah.
Alongside all the big mythological elements.
It's quite mixed.
And if you zoom out, you see humanity just grappling with these huge questions, right? Our origins, the world, consequences.
Yeah, the big stuff.
This book is one ancient attempt to answer those, not just theologically, but on a really human level.
Yeah.
The practical side, the emotional fallout of that first mistake.
So our mission for this deep dive is essentially to unearth the key insights in the first book of Adam and Eve.
Yep, explore its unique details.
Some you really won't find anywhere else. And try to grasp what it tells us about how early humans understood things like good and evil, hardship, and even hope.
Think of it as adding layers, maybe?
Yeah.
More context, more detail to a story you thought you knew inside out.
Ready to explore this with us?
Okay, let's start by setting the scene. Literally, this text describes God planting the garden eastward.
Okay.
And beyond that, just this vast sea surrounding the whole world.
But there's something unique to the north, isn't there?
Yeah, get this. A sea of water, clear and pure. Almost sounds like it has cleansing properties.
It's described as having this amazing taste and so clear you can see right down to the earth's depths.
Incredible imagery.
And what stands out is God's specific reason for it. Apparently it was meant for the souls of future righteous people.
Right. After they die and are resurrected, they'd cleanse themselves there.
It's a fascinating glimpse into early ideas about purification, the afterlife, things less explicit in Genesis.
Definitely. And notice where Adam ends up after the expulsion. The western border of the garden.
Yeah, that doesn't feel random.
It's not. The text is specific.
Yeah.
God didn't want Adam too close to that northern cleansing sea.
Why? Too easy a fix.
Kind of. Feared they'd wash away their sins too quickly, maybe lose sight of the gravity of it all.
Okay.
And similarly, not to the south, where the tempting smells of the garden might waft over. Again, might lessen their repentance.
So the West it is, this vast, unknown territory. And specifically, they end up in a cave of treasures.
Yeah, located in a rock below the garden. Not exactly a five-star resort after Eden.
No kidding. And the initial shock of this new reality, it hits them hard.
Immensely. The text says, when they leave the garden and see the world, the rocks, the sand, it's so different.
So utterly unlike the lushness they knew.
They actually collapse, just fall down as if dead. From sheer fear and despair.
Wow, can you even imagine that transition?
It's brutal. One moment, perfection. The next, this barren, scary unknown. No wonder they were terrified.
But then God steps in.
Right. Sends his word to raise them up. And here's another really key difference from Genesis. God gives them a prophecy.
A promise of salvation.
Yes, but with this very specific timeline. 5 days and a half.
Which, understandably, Adam completely misunderstands at first.
Totally. He thinks it means 5 literal days until the end of the world or something. He despairs.
So God has to clarify.
Yeah, he explains it actually means 5,500 years.
That's quite a different timescale.
It really is. It gives this huge long-term perspective to their exile, doesn't it? And the eventual promise of rescue. adds this profound historical scale you don't quite get in Genesis.
And before they even leave the garden, there's a covenant made.
By a withered tree, a powerful symbol of their transgression.
Yeah, a constant reminder. And then they're afraid of the cherub guarding the gate, which makes sense.
Absolutely. But again, God shows compassion, reassures them, and tells Adam to find comfort in that cave of treasures.
So even in the punishment, there's this element of divine care woven in.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on from that initial shock, the text really digs into their sense of loss, their grief.
Oh, profoundly. They weep for their first abode, the garden.
Adam's lament is particularly striking, isn't it? He contrasts the beauty they lost with the harshness of the cave.
He paints such a vivid picture, the narrowness, the gloom, the rocky floor, compared to the groves, the light, the fruit trees of Eden.
It really hits home the scale of what they've lost.
And it's not just the physical place. Adam grieves the change in their actual senses.
Oh, so.
Well, their eyes, which used to see angels, are now of flesh.
Yeah.
They can't perceive those heavenly beings anymore.
This bright nature they talk about.
Exactly. That loss is a recurring theme. It seems to mean this kind of spiritual and physical radiance they had.
Granting them heightened senses, a closer connection to God.
Something like that. And they lose it because they disobeyed. Even their bodies are different, not as radiant as before.
You can feel Adam's hesitation, his reluctance even to go into the cave. It feels like such a downgrade.
A deep sense of degradation, yeah.
Yeah.
He only goes in because God commanded it, and he's afraid of messing up again.
So once inside, they pray, apparently in an unknown language.
Yeah, which maybe signifies that sort of direct, unfiltered connection they still had, perhaps.
Interesting thought. But Adam is just overwhelmed by the cave, the darkness, the confinement. He collapses again.
And that's when Eve steps up with this incredibly emotional, powerful prayer.
She really does. She takes full responsibility, doesn't she? Begs God for Adam's life, or let her die with him.
She even brings up her creation from Adam's rib, emphasizing their unity, her connection to him. It's intense remorse.
A real moment of self-sacrifice.
And God responds. He raises them, but there's also a firm rebuke.
What does she say?
She reminds them their sin came from their own desire, their desire for divinity, to be like him.
He points out there were better fruit trees available, sort of countering any idea he was withholding something.
Exactly. It wasn't about lack on God's part.
And this is really key, right? The text makes it clear. They disobeyed out of their own free will.
Influenced by Satan, sure, who fell for similar reasons, ambition, wanting godhood. But ultimately, their choice.
God emphasizes his goal wasn't destruction, but punishment leading to repentance.
Right, with a serious warning. Stay hardened and face a perpetual curse.
Right.
It really puts the focus on their agency, their accountability.
Okay, so despite still weeping, there's a shift happening towards hope.
Yeah, slowly. They start recognizing God's compassion, maybe seeing him as both fatherly and motherly in a way.
And God makes another covenant with Adam here.
Reiterating the timeline. No return to the garden until those 5,500 years are up.
Then Adam brings up a very practical worry.
The animals.
Yeah, he's afraid they'll turn on them now because of his sin.
Which reflects that loss of harmony with creation they had before, right? Adam used to have peaceful dominion. Exactly. Now he expects hostility. But God, again, shows mercy.
He commands the beasts.
Yeah, except the serpent, obviously. He tells them to be familiar with Adam, not to harm him or his righteous kids down the line.
That's a pretty significant act of protection, reassurance.
Definitely. And Adam circles back to that loss of perception, lamenting they can't see angels anymore.
And God's explanation is quite direct.
Very. Their bright nature was taken away because they disobeyed. Simple cause and effect in this narrative limited their sight to earthly things.
So as they're navigating this new world, they find their way back to the garden gate.
And they discover the water flowing from the tree of life, branching into 4 rivers.
Which you'd think would be great, but it just triggers more sorrow.
Yeah, Adam laments the plagues they've brought on themselves, on future generations.
It's interesting how their view of this water changed. In the garden, they didn't need it, or maybe didn't notice it much.
But now, out here in the harsh world, they suddenly realize how vital it is.
And their despair just gets overwhelming again, to the point where they fall into the water.
Yes, actually wishing for death. It really shows how severe they felt their punishment was, how much they longed for release.
But, once again, divine intervention.
God sends an angel to rescue them. And his explanation for why they need water now is, well, quite something.
What does he say?
That their bodies have become like beasts after the transgression. They now need earthly sustenance like water.
Wow. That really underscores their fallen state.
It does, and Adam pleads again, can we go back to the garden? Shows how deep his regret is.
But the answer is still tied to the prophecy, the future return.
Exactly, not yet.
Their physical struggles don't let up either. Intense thirst, heat.
And yet, they decide not to drink that water they found.
Why not?
They're afraid it will just increase their punishment somehow. It shows this growing kind of fear-driven awareness of consequences.
A form of self-denial. So they go back to the Cave of Treasures.
And the darkness hits them. It becomes this tangible thing, a symbol of their fallen state.
They can't even see each other.
No, just hear voices in the dark. And Adam starts reminiscing about their bright nature in the garden.
That constant light, the glory, the trees.
It's such a powerful contrast he paints. Remembering a world without night and day, lit by the tree of life itself.
You can just feel the weight of that loss.
Yeah.
Imagining paradise versus this dark, cramped cave.
It's incredibly poignant. The darkness really symbolizes the end of their joy, their connection with God, and even with each other visually.
So they mourn through that whole first night. Adam's distressed, Eve's afraid.
It really emphasizes their vulnerability in this new world.
And then God intervenes again, raises Adam, lets Eve speak.
And this leads to a crucial explanation about the darkness itself.
Adam asks the basic questions, right? Where did this darkness come from? Why did the light leave?
Fundamental questions.
Yeah.
And God's answer connects it directly to Satan.
The disobedient angel.
Yeah. Who lost his own bright light when he was cast down. So darkness becomes linked to disobedience on a cosmic level first.
And God clarifies that while Adam also lost his bright light,
He mercifully didn't turn him completely dark. He clothed him in flesh instead.
that act of mercy keeps coming up. It's central.
Absolutely. And importantly, God explains the night isn't a permanent punishment, it's temporary.
Just a cycle, 12 hours.
Created along with the sun for work and rest. He tells Adam not to despair. He emphasizes, I foresaw your sin, but I didn't force it. I didn't abandon you. I created you for light.
And the purpose of the original commandment about the tree gets clarified too.
As a warning against Satan's lies, God says he gave the command so they couldn't later blame him.
Reinforcing that free will, that accountability again. So day and night aren't punishment, but provision for this new life.
Exactly, part of their new earthly existence.
Okay, so finally, Adam pleads, please relieve us of this darkness.
And this leads to what you could call the earliest prophecy in this specific text.
God promises the darkness is temporary. It'll pass each day.
Until the covenant is fulfilled.
And the detail in this prophecy is just remarkable.
It really is. God talks about coming down from heaven himself.
Yeah.
Becoming flesh from Adam's seed.
Taking on their weaknesses, experiencing darkness even in the grave.
He who is timeless will enter time, be counted as a son of man, all to save them.
That's an incredibly powerful foreshadowing of redemption.
It's a breathtaking moment, really. A real glimmer of hope right in the middle of all their sorrow and hardship.
So Adam and Eve, despite everything they're going through, get this promise. Future salvation, eventual return to the light.
It's a powerful note to end this part of their story on. A mix of sorrow and hope.
So just to recap, our deep dive into the first book of Adam and Eve, wow, it's unveiled this really fascinating expansion of the Genesis story we thought we knew.
Yeah, we've seen the immediate fallout from the expulsion in such detail. The harshness outside Eden, their intense emotional struggle.
And that constant back and forth between their mistakes and God's compassion.
It's been really insightful exploring these unique bits that cleansing see, the ideas about the afterlife maybe.
The reasons for where Adam was placed, the whole concept of the lost, bright nature.
And that detailed explanation for where darkness came from. Definitely some aha moments in there.
For sure. It highlights how different traditions wrestled with and interpreted these foundational stories.
Absolutely. This ancient account really offers new ways to think about those fundamental themes, doesn't it? Temptation, responsibility.
And the presence of hope, even after such a massive fall.
Which kind of brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Yeah, how does this ancient account, with all its unique details, its focus on personal responsibility, but also divine mercy, how does it resonate with your understanding of the Adam and Eve story?
And maybe what might these differences tell us about the diverse ways people have grappled with origins, consequences, choices over the centuries?
It's definitely given us a richer perspective to consider.